Hello and welcome to In the Dirt from the Gravel Ride podcast. I'm your host, Craig Dalton, and I'll be joined shortly by my co-host, Randall Jacobs. If you're new to the podcast, In the Dirt is a discussion about how gravel cycling fits into our lives, new product releases, and various things that are going on in the gravel cycling industry. In alternative weeks, I do long-form interviews with athletes, product designers, and event organizers. The podcast is supported by a small select group of sponsors, as well as by listeners like you. Simply visit buymeacoffee.com/thegravelride to contribute. With that, let's jump right in. Hey, Randall, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, Craig. How are you?
I feel very empowered. I successfully didn't say welcome, Randall, to the podcast.
Congratulations.
So that is good. I am in general feeling quite good. I have to say, like, things are starting to slip back to normal from a riding perspective. And I didn't know it at the time and maybe couldn't have predicted it. But there's just a sort of a lightness in my communication with people. For example, I was riding up Mount Tam on Saturday and just happened upon someone riding about the same pace. And we just spoke. We just spoke like you would 18 months ago. Great conversation. Wasn't really thinking once or twice whether this guy has COVID and I'm going to get infected or anything like that. So it's just this levity that I really just, it was palpable for me on Saturday.
Yeah, I can definitely feel that as well. And just, as long as you ask the question of, are you vaccinated? Like, and you have that like 2 to 3 week window from the first shot, the likelihood of transmission between two vaccinated people is pretty infinitesimal, especially in an outdoor environment. So big group settings, yeah, sure, extra cautions, but it does seem that the guidance is increasingly leaning towards feeling entirely safe, rolling up next to somebody who's friendly and you can trust to be honest with you. And that's a huge weight lifted after these very heavy, few months.
Yeah, absolutely. And to boot, the conversation was super cool. The gentleman's involved in World Bicycle Relief as a charity. I won't profess to know a ton about it yet. I've seen it before and seen a bunch of fundraisers over the years, and they're providing utility bikes across Africa and really changing lives over there. So it was just great to make that connection and circle back and meet some more members of the team after the fact and potentially even have them on the pod.
I feel like Marin is one of those places where you can bump into such people. The other ones being like Boulder and Bentonville and in some of the Boston area.
Yeah, absolutely. So how are you doing? You are in the midst of a huge transition this week.
Very big transition. So have decided to leave the Bay Area. Actually have really been contemplating life in a general sense, but as regards to how we discuss things here, really thinking about how the bicycle has fit into the community that I built here, the community that I'm going to be connecting with along my journey back to the Northeast. The community that I'm going to be embedding back into once I'm out there. And it really drives home this idea that I've spoken to before that is very real in my life of the bicycle as this vehicle for connection.
So if you think about it, I mean, you're doing a cross-country journey, and obviously you've spent time and grew up on the East Coast. But as you approach that journey, how is the bike kind of making connections for you differently than it might have a decade ago?
Well, so a decade ago, I didn't have the depth of relationships that I have now around the bike. So I had a few people that I rode with and so on. If we go, let's see, a decade ago I was 28, so I was pretty focused on racing. But in mountain biking in particular, that's a pretty solitary endeavor, especially when you're living out of the back of your Honda Element and driving around the country, sleeping in national parks and truck stops. But at this stage, I look, as I reflect on my time here, I had a get together the other day with, just showed up in a park with some speakers and tea and a blanket and said, whoever wants to show up, show up. And about half of the people who showed up were people that I knew through bike. So these are, people that I was connected to as an entrepreneur who are also in the bike space. These are people who I've met through riding, people who bought some of our early bikes or their friends. I met a few riders that I hadn't met before, actually, that ride our bikes. And that was really special. And then I was part of a Burning Man camp that was, the bicycle repair camp, and so those people as well. And so there's this really strong bicycle theme that knits together this patchwork of people in my life.
Yeah, I always find it interesting in my personal connections as well, how different the people are that ride a bike, from the spectrum of sex, race, whatever. It self-selects around this activity of the bike and around nothing else. Whereas I don't know of a lot of other things in life that really do it in such a great way.
But it's this element of, certainly I got my start in a much more competitive sort of paradigm. And it's probably no coincidence that I didn't have the deep relationships when I was in that competitive mindset that I have now. Whereas my mindset is very much one of, let's go have an adventure together.
Yeah, I think that's poignant, because I know when you're training, and this is what always sort of turned me off to being super competitive, besides the fact that I'm probably physically not gifted enough to be super competitive, but let's leave that aside for now. But what I found was when I was training, whether it was by heart rate, before power meters came out, if you were really on a structured training plan, it was really difficult to ride with other people, because chances are they weren't going to be putting out the same power you were, or weren't on the same program that day. So if you really wanted to stick to the program, it was generally, maybe you had one group ride a week, but otherwise you better be out there on your own. And now my attitude is completely different to that. If I hook up with someone who's interesting to talk to, I'm very happy to modify my pace and do whatever that day.
Yeah. Well, and I just mentioned kind of the Bay Area too. As I'm migrating across the country, there are, I have stops that are a day apart where, I'm staying in Park City with, somebody I know I've actually never met in person, but who purchased one of our bikes and invited me to stay with him and his wife for a couple of days. So that'll be great. Colorado will be in the Front Range, huge cycling community out there that I've been tied into just through going out there to visit and to, early on promote thesis and things like this. Bentonville, Arkansas, a friend from college, again, know him through the bike team, and have several friends from the Northeastern University bike team that are in the Bentonville area. And then maybe another stop between there and upstate New York, where I'm meeting people who, again, I met through the bicycle before going on to Boston, and staying with my sister, my brother-in-law, my niece, and my nephews. And my brother-in-law has, not that we weren't very close beforehand, but also, rides one of our bikes and is somebody who I connect with in that way too. So really just a lovely kind of coming together of a lot of work that I've done in the space.
Yeah, what a great way to kind of work your way across the country, just to kind of touch all those different areas and different people that you've connected with through cycling. I know that's one of our shared goal with the Ridership Forum, is just to sort of make these connections really possible.
Yeah, and in fact, now, to tie together the two topics we've dived into so far, using like the ridership to start coordinating rides. So, if you're in your local region, if you have a lot of people, places like the Bay Area, for example, you want to meet people, this is a place to go out and coordinate rides. But then also in some of the other regions, start inviting your friends, start bringing people together in a way that creates a critical mass, so that now you can coordinate for those adventures. Now that we're all vaccinated, we're getting vaccinated, and it's safe to do so. I also love the idea of people in the forum doing exactly what I'm doing, which is traveling across the country and linking up with other community members along the way, and having this trust that is built through this shared love of cycling and the fact that both parties have self-selected into an intentional community.
Yeah, exactly. I had an experience a couple of weeks back with Tom Boss, who's he's in the Marin County Bike Coalition, and put out there that he's doing a pre-ride for the start of their virtual series of events, so culminating in the Dirt Fondo. And he just put an open call out there in the San Francisco Regional Forum for anybody who wanted to come out and do the Bolinas Ridge pre-ride, kind of a recon ride. And it was fun. Mm-hmm. Myself and another forum member, Patricia, came out, and we went out and knocked out the route and made some modifications, and I think gave Tom some good feedback as to what the ultimate routes should be for that ride.
Great. Well, and for anyone listening from New England, I'll be out there in the Northeast generally for the summer. And so definitely expect to see some postings for group rides and other meetups and so on, over the course of the next several months once I get settled in.
Nice. I'm also keen to get your take on the Bentonville gravel scene. As you know, I've been out there once and been out on some of the roads on the Big Sugar race course. So I'd be curious to get your perspective on it as well when you get out there.
Well, unfortunately, this time I had to ship my bicycle back to Boston. So I've got trail runners with me. My Prius is up to the ceiling. The front, the passenger seat is filled up. I can just barely see my rear view mirror on the passenger side. So really kind of maxed out there. But I will get some sense, and I'll definitely be back out that way. But there's actually, my friends are connected to some of the folks who are leading some of the trail building and advocacy efforts out there. So maybe I find someone to link you up with for the pod.
Yeah. Well, if you can swing it, I would say maybe rent a mountain bike, because the trails there are supposed to be really world-class, what they've cut in, and the amount of trail work is unprecedented. So it would be a shame for you not to get out there and try some of those trails out.
All right. I got some shoes and pedals buried deeply inside the vehicle that I could probably pull out for that.
There you go. Hey, I did want to highlight something that came across my desk this week, and it's from a guest from back in 2019, Juan de la Roca. He was a guest on the podcast talking about his vision for gravel as a sort of travel destination and his dream of highlighting his town of Trinidad, Colorado, as a gravel cycling destination. And he just sent me this passport-sized gravel guide. Incredibly well executed, a whole bunch of routes in here combined with a bunch of history in the region, and just a really clever way to present the region. And I thought, I was just super proud of him. I mean, I don't know him well. We talk via email every couple months and have had him on the pod, obviously. But I was just really proud of the culmination of all the work he's put in. And the astute listener may have caught that a few weeks back I mentioned Lifetime is producing an event called the Rad Dirt, I believe, in Trinidad this year, and it's a running and gravel cycling festival.
Oh, that's pretty great. And remind me, Trinidad is in the southern part of the Rockies?
Yeah, the way southern corner of the state, down by New Mexico. So quite a bit south from what it sounds like your route's going to be through Colorado.
Yeah, I'll be driving through Steamboat Springs, doing some back roads on my way to Denver.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. Nice. So I will put a link to where you can get your hands on one of these gravel guides. It sounds like Trinidad and it's Las Animas County in Colorado is really kind of rearing its head up as one of those new destinations that we should all have. I'm super attracted to it just because it looks very remote and untouched. He says you can get out of town. It's a cool old Western town. You can get out of town and just get on these huge, the expanses of gravel roads.
Look forward to being back out this way in a different part of the year, maybe next year.
Yeah, exactly. And then also on the personal front, I've been riding shockingly 700 by 32s lately.
So road tires,
essentially. But it's been fun because, as the listener knows, like I'm so big on 650 by 47 being the do-all tires. And I still stand by that because you don't have to think about it a lot. It gets you, they're fast enough on the road. You don't have to think about it. You've got a lot of suspension built into these tires. But there was something nice about going a little smaller. And for me, as I've said before, I kind of think about where I'm going differently depending on what my bike setup is that particular week. And being fortunate enough to have two sets of wheels, I've been thinking about, traveling further away from Mill Valley to begin my rides. And because I was on 32s, I was also thinking, well, I don't want to do any extreme descending on these tires either. So how do I configure a route that's maybe different than I would ride normally?
I find that the trick there is oftentimes to do all your climbing on the dirt and then find a road for the way down. And
Yeah,
that kind of works really well when you're doing exploring with the narrower tires.
that's essentially what I did. I rode up to East Peak and then down on the road over to Stinson Beach, and actually ended up riding all the way home on the road just because it was quite a hot day and I was feeling gassed.
Yeah,
But
nice.
it's cool to, again, always like look at the different personalities you can have for your bike, and it continually keeps my personal riding fresh by exploring different tire combinations.
So what else do you have going on with your bicycle these days?
I mentioned I'm upgrading to the pro version of the Redshift stem, so I'm still excited about that. I've got some pretty nifty new stuff coming that I can't talk about yet that I'm going to be trying, but really excited again just to explore a different avenue of the sport.
Very cool.
Yeah, and then on clothing, I've also just been trying a bunch of different clothing strategies out. I've always been a lycra kit kind of guy. Just found like overall it's kind of the most efficient. I really got my layering dialed on that setup, so it's just usually the easiest way for me to get out the door.
Remind me, how old are you now?
Randall, come on.
Well, I mean, I want to know, are you officially a mammal?
I'm 50 years old.
I think that makes you a middle-aged man in lycra.
And then there you go. I will embrace that. But I've got, the casual cycling short has come a long way. I mean, obviously it sort of started on the mountain bike side of the house with kind of baggy, durable stuff. But I've been actually waiting and talking for, it seems like a couple years, about gravel getting its own style and the garments kind of fitting in a way that meets the combination of road and mountain, off-road and road that we do on gravel bikes.
I've thought about this, and I've ridden baggies before. I always go back to lycra just because I like how it moves with my body. And if I'm going for a ride, I'm generally going for a longer or harder ride. Maybe not these days. I haven't been riding much at all. But when I'm back on the bike, have you ridden the style that I like is, well, one, I like how the aesthetically the trend has been more towards simpler design, more muted colors, not a bunch of loud branding and so on that was really obnoxious, but something that's really kind of classy and stylish.
Yeah.
But then things like lycra cargo shorts, where you have a pocket built into the thigh that you can put some things in, and maybe other storage solutions in the jerseys. Maybe things don't fit as thickly or have more features or not as hyper lightweight.
Yeah. No, I mean, going back to what you started with, I'm keen on this evolution. I think for me, the overshort needs to be very lightweight, not constricting, because I do enjoy that comfort level of the lycra. And I do find myself, as you sort of mentioned, this is more of a shorter ride kind of look for me. Having the extra pockets is interesting. Being able to kind of roll into an après situation in a little bit more non-lycra fashion is also appealing. I had Tim Clark a couple of years ago from Kitspo, and I just got a pair of Kitspo shorts that are handmade in their new facility in North Carolina. And first off, huge hats off to those guys for making that investment in North Carolina. They've really invigorated the local economy there and proving that, the sort of the just-in-time inventory model of clothing production can be sustainable. There's definitely a premium on these shorts, but I have to say the design and execution on these shorts was absolutely exceptional. There's some little details, including kind of the pocket going back onto your hip rather than in front onto your thigh, that I was just really impressed with.
Yeah, this dives into a topic that is dear to my heart. I actually talked to Russ over at Path Less Pedaled about this at length at one point, which is like reshoring, and what are the things that could be produced here, and kind of the order of operations and the challenges associated with bringing things domestic, or at least having things produced closer to where they're used in a general sense. It's not about necessarily like pro-America and stuff from Asia or elsewhere is bad, but more like having it be more tied to the communities that are the communities producing it are also the communities using it.
Yeah, that was an interesting conversation you had on Path Less Pedaled, and I encourage everybody to listen to it because there's a lot that goes into it. Obviously, if you're manufacturing offshore, you've got shipping and huge time delays potentially in the supply chain. And if you can step back, sometimes when you look at the business and the costs and the timing, sometimes bringing it back does make sense. And that's super exciting when we see companies doing that.
Yeah, it's a topic that I'm also kind of engaged in on an advisory basis with stuff outside of the bike industry too. So it's interesting to see, does Kitspo own their own production?
They do. Yep.
They do. So that's different. Like do you know of anyone else who's doing their own garment production domestically who actually owns it? Because I know some examples of companies that are using domestic vendors, which is also great.
Yeah, I don't know for certain. There's certainly some like Jersey and Lycra companies that may own their own facilities, but I know of dozens that outsource it to local seamstresses and seamsters. Yeah,
I think Ornat is using a domestic manufacturer, and obviously their stuff is really nice and popular here in the Bay Area. And I think Allele is domestic as well.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah.
Both of those guys were the ones I was thinking of as well.
Yeah.
The other ones I've been trying have been from Gore, and super lightweight, nice from a kind of weight perspective. They're really hitting the mark for me. They've also got some great ones for inclement weather. As you can imagine, with a history as Gore has, they've got some incredible fabrics that they're bringing to bear. I'm fortunate that I haven't had to ride in any inclement weather lately, but this is what I'm trying to piece together. Like I'm with you that most likely if I'm going out for 100-mile ride, it's going to be a straight Lycra setup. But if it's cold, if it's going to be foggy, particularly here where we ride in the Bay Area, like all of a sudden this is a new nuance to my layering technique that I can throw in the mix, which I'm excited about.
Well, and being able to hang out in your kit and like not only have it be just like I'm only going out to bike, and then additionally having it be more accessible in the sense that a lot of people aren't comfortable wearing a tight Lycra kit, especially when they're first getting into the sport. And so making it so that having more standard looking clothing is acceptable. You're still legitimate on the bicycle or seen as such.
Yep.
I think is definitely a good thing as well.
Yeah. And additionally, like think about the bike packing experience, even if you're going on a short one, just kind of combining a day of riding with a day of enjoying whatever community you're rolling through. It just makes it kind of a more approachable combination.
That's where getting like a two-piece short comes in, where you have the liner with the pad built in, the chamois built in, and then when you get to your destination, you pull that out and you still have your regular shorts, you go jump in a lake or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I got to play around with. I mean, I actually have some friends who are super down with the casual short look, and they're not running chamois underneath. And I haven't tried that yet to see if there's a comfort level. I mean, obviously, like these particular shorts, they're gusseted in a way, unlike a traditional street short that you're buying where the gusset's right under your undercarriage. These cycling shorts are gusseting in a way that, you can sit on them comfortably. I'm just not sure that I'm ready for the padless ride.
Yeah, I think anything over an hour, hour and a half, I'm definitely going to want a chamois moving with my skin.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I might have to get some liner shorts that are not bibs because it is getting hot these days out here. And I'm finding like between an overshort and a bib, it's just, it's a little bit overkill.
It's getting hot and the days are getting long. It is prime riding season in the Bay and throughout the entire northern region of the country.
Yeah,
it's great.
Exactly. All right, my friend. Well, I wish you safe travels. We can't wait to hear from you as you pickpocket your way across the United States, and be safe. We'll talk to you in a few weeks.
Thank you, friend. All right, we'll talk soon.
Cheers. So that's it for another edition of In the Dirt from the Gravel Ride podcast. Thank you for spending part of your week with us this week. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you're interested in supporting the podcast, please visit www.buymeacoffee.com/thegravelride. And if you have any feedback, feel free to join us in the Ridership forum. Just visit www.theridership.com. Until next time, here's to finding some dirt under your wheels.